So that's what it looks like when it's on. Hello, welcome to Waypoint Survival. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a hobo knee pad. Stay tuned. For those of you who've been following the series, you know that the classic hobo, especially during the Great Depression era that we were talking about, was a traveling working man. And they were very conscientious about their appearance because that could lead them to either getting a good job or not. Much as today, people back then did not trust someone who smelled bad or was dirty, filthy, of course, riding sometimes in coal cars along the trains and tracks with the burning cinders, having to camp into the outdoors. It was a very dirty and filthy environment. So they were very particular about taking care of themselves, staying well groomed and shaved and trimmed up. It might be a shock to a lot of people because they think that a modern hobo or a classic hobo is synonymous with a tramp or a bum, but they are not. And they had their own hobo code of ethics. I have posted that before. I'll place it up here again so you can see. But one of the things that they insisted on was they would boil up or clean up. They would get a large pot of water and they would boil their clothes, whatever items they had that they wanted to stay clean. They would make sure to try to get rid of any dirt or any lice in their bodies or their hair, so as to be as clean and presentable. Remember that many of these men had homes and had families, children back home. And so they were traveling the rails because they were poor. There wasn't any work around the home area. Now, Charles Goodyear was credited with discovering the process of vulcanization for rubber in 1839. So certainly by the end of the Civil War, we know that they had what was known as rubber gum blankets. So the rubber process had been pretty well worked on and defined, although of course there were still a lot of improvements to be made. By the 1890s, the craze of bicycling had taken over the United States, and so a need for a softer tire with a better ride was born. And out of those bicycle inner tubes, some of the first ones actually were made from leather. But they began to use the rubber vulcanization process to make better and better rubber. And of course, by the early 20th century, rubber inner tubes were all over the place. Since the hobo was a traveling working man who also needed to keep his clothes and equipment as clean as possible for working out in the fields and then moving on to the next job, he would take certain precautions. There was also, of course, the need for climbing in and out of boxcars, clambering around on rails and railroad ties, of course, which were covered with a sticky tar-like substance. And of course, that would get you really dirty. So here is a great invention from probably the 1920s that I wanted to share with you. For materials, you need very little. First of all, you need to find some sort of a large inner tube. You can see the size of this one. All I did was go to a shop that works and repairs on tractor and trailer tires, and they had a large pile setting out back. And I told them what I was looking for. I was wanting to do a project, and I needed some old inner tubes. It doesn't matter if they leak or not. You're just looking for the rubber. And the man took me out back and said, help yourself, take whatever you want. Now, it's very important that you get one that will fit the diameter of your leg. So you might want to take a tape measure or perhaps a soft cloth measure like they use for sewing clothes, and make sure and measure the diameter, especially of your thigh, because that's where it's going to have to stretch the most. Another item that a hobo might carry in his pack that would be enormously useful, besides doing repairs on clothes and things like that, would be a good pair of metal scissors. Of course, these were readily available, and many people would even perhaps bring them from home. Because again, a pair of scissors is a very useful tool, not only for doing projects, but for trimming one's own hair and things of that nature before going into town. So the first thing we want to do is cut out a section of this inner tube, somewhere around 10 to 12 inches. Again, it depends on how long you want it to be and how much coverage you wish to cover your pants. And we're just going to simply cut this. Now, it's a little stiff, but you can usually cut it with the scissors and cut both layers at the same time. That's the best way to get it even all the way across. When you're done, you're going to have a piece like this, of course longer in the front and smaller in the back. Next, we're going to be cutting out some straps. These are the rubber pieces that go around the legs on both sides, and then coming around here for the knee protector. If you will notice, I have also marked along the area where I intend to cut. I used a Sharpie, but you can use a piece of charcoal or a lead pencil or anything that will actually make a mark on this. A white crayon would work really well, and hobos did carry crayons to make marks on posts and signs and things around houses. We hope to get to that in a later video. But anyway, I think that you will like this right here. This seems to be a pretty good pattern. You want to leave enough so that it gives a good protection around the front of the knee. If you cut it too shallow, obviously your pants are going to get wet if you kneel into any kind of water. If you don't happen to have a pair of scissors, you might of course be carrying your pocket knife, some sort of a hawkbill pruning blade. This of course, because of the tip and its design, can easily be used to cut along the material. However, I find that using scissors gives me a little better outcome. Now we're simply going to begin to cut this out. I'll get back to you when I'm done. And just like that, we are finished, and this is what it's going to look like. Of course, a piece of rubber is very useful. There's a whole lot of things you could use this for. Just let your imagination run wild. But I would encourage you to hang on to any scrap pieces, especially something small and flat that can be packed away for future use. Of course, you'll want to do this twice so that you have one for each leg, unless of course you only have one leg, and then you'll just need one. Putting it on is quite simple. Open this up. Of course, you can see we have a band at the top and a band at the bottom. Simply go over top of the shoe, up onto the leg, and then the second one, same thing. Then you begin to stretch this out and pull it up. Get over top of your pants. Keep those pulled down. And then just continue to work it on up over top of the thigh and the knee. Keep everything straight until it has a good amount of tension. And of course you want to make sure that it can't slip around and move while you walk. So here's what they look like when they're both on. As you can see, they're very nice and tight. They hold well, plenty of tension to this rubber. You can walk around with it back and forth, do whatever you need to do, climb in and out of railroad cars, box cars, anything like that. And you're not going to worry about getting the knees of your pants all dirty or torn out, so that when you get to the next job you can look presentable and not have all raggedy knees stitched up and repaired. And of course, there's a lot of old inner tubes everywhere, and you could easily make another set if you needed them. Then if you need to go to ground to work on someone's garden, start a fire, do whatever you want to around camp, you're going to keep your knees really nice and dry, and it's going to do you really well. I could see these being really useful not just for the hobo community, but also of course for bushcrafting and survival and a lot of things, besides the fact that a small piece of rubber inner tube like this makes an excellent fire starter. This is James Bender for Waypoint Survival. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also make sure and check out the links in the description box below, just under the More button. While you're down there, you'll also find our waypointsurvival.com link. And this is where you can sign up to take survival and bushcraft classes here at our beautiful training facility in Southern Ohio. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel. We'd really appreciate it. And when you do subscribe, make sure and press that bell button so that you can stay notified of all of our upcoming videos, and we'll talk to you next time.